Well, you said that the TLC addresses the modern depression epidemic at its source, the fact that human beings are not designed for the poorly nourished, sedentary, indoor, sleep-deprived, socially isolated, frenzied pace of 21st century life. Is there anything that you would add to that sentence today versus 16 years ago?
Oh, that's good. I like that question a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, in a broader sort of framing, that question could be interpreted as like, well, did you need a second edition of the book? So the first edition came out 16 years ago. What has changed? And to unpack that question, I love the question. To unpack it, I think the first part A for me is, has the science changed on anything that I recommended in the first edition? Mm-hmm. Was there something that we thought 16 years ago that was helpful that now, with better studies, this happens all the time in science, by the way.
Sure.
With better studies, it's like, oh, well, maybe high dose omega-3 fats are not as antidepressant as we thought. Turns out they are. Thankfully, it turns out everything that was part of the core set of recommendations 16 years ago has stood the test of time pretty well.
My Inner Knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
But there's some refinement. Mm-hmm. And there are some new things that we've learned that I would say expand upon in different ways the principles that were laid out initially. So I wanted to make sure in the second edition to share with readers my take as a clinical researcher, as somebody who stays on top of this fast changing literature. Where are we right now? And then what's actionable and what's reasonable among the things that are actionable? Because there's a pragmatic consideration here as well. When people are depressed, by definition, they don't have as much energy as they have. Right. People are depressed, by definition, they don't have as much mental bandwidth, typically, as they would have at their healthier baseline. Mm-hmm. And so any treatment program for depression has to be very thoughtful and intentional about, like, well, what is achievable without being overwhelming or unrealistic or, and so that's a really interesting sort of fine line or dialectic, if I can use Marshall Lenahan's word, between, on the one hand, wanting to be, throw in the kitchen sink, like, oh, well, here are all the possible things you could ever possibly try. Mm-hmm. Because, depression is somewhat, help me out here. I cannot get out of these fancy scientific word. I'm going to just drop it, and then you can give me a better one. Heterogeneous. Depression is it's a fancy way of saying there are a lot of different subtypes of depression. There are a lot of different ways it manifests. Right. Is there a better word for that? It's highly variable, I guess.
I think people think depression is one thing, and I was like, oh, I think it's hundreds of things.
Yeah. It's not, I'm going to drop another fancy word. It's not monolithic, right? It's not just like, and because of that, there's no one size fits all. That's a huge point, right? There's no one size fits all treatment.
Right.
And so the treatment approach that I call it mine, I probably should say ours, because I had a lot of talented grad students that helped.
Sure.
In fine-tuning the protocol. The program we developed, it's called Therapeutic Lifestyle Change, or TLC. The book that describes this is called Depression Cure, which we can come back to because I hate the title. But it is what it is. My so they know I hate it. but it's a hope. Walker, back to a point you made earlier. I mean, it's a very hopeful title, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it serves its purpose that way. That program, Therapeutic Lifestyle Change, is built around 6 core principles of modifiable lifestyle strategies, modifiable habits that are part of our lifestyle that are not that hard to modify, but they can't all be done at once. So we have to kind of pick and choose, like, all right, well, what's some low hanging fruit that just about anybody can do? On the other hand, probably nobody is going to respond equally to all 6 of them, because depression is highly variable, because there's no one size fits all approach. What I have discovered, so we've, probably treated a couple hundred patients with therapeutic lifestyle change, folks who come in with clinical depression. And at the end of the program, I've always asked them systematically, like, of the different lifestyle changes you've made, which did you personally feel were the helpful, or what were the most essential for you, based on just knowing your own body, knowing your own mind and your response? And it's all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, every single strategy that we include in the program was nominated by several patients as, like, that was the thing. And every single strategy was also nominated as, I don't know if that really did anything. And that's fine, right? I mean, that's probably as it should be. Part of the beauty of having a lifestyle-based approach, which, by the way, is an increasing emphasis in all of medicine. If you see a cardiologist, if they're a good cardiologist at the cutting edge, they're going to talk to you a lot about your lifestyle and your habits and your diet and your movement and your sleep and your stress management and all those things. They all matter a lot. But part of the beauty of a lifestyle medicine-based approach to depression is it's like offering a smorgasbord. And, if you go through a line at a cafeteria, a smorgasbord, it's like you may sample lots of different dishes. You're not going to love all of them, but hopefully a couple of them you're going to, oh, that's the thing, And so I think that's a really important principle in all of treatment, but especially when we get into the realm of lifestyle-based interventions. Like, we don't want to overwhelm. We want to take one thing at a time, build one habit at a time, understanding that your mileage may vary. You may know people for whom this was a life changer, and for you it might be less so, but there will be something probably that will be. And if you get all the way to the end of the program, and you've put everything in place, I've never known a patient to do that who didn't experience some really significant clinical improvement. But there are some conditions that could keep them from getting into full recovery.
Sure.
But then we need to, problem solve and troubleshoot and think, like, all right, well, what else could be going on? Are there some other clinical strategies for depression, or do we need to, well, at that point, we definitely need to get a full medical workup, because there are a lot of medical conditions like sleep apnea or, hypothyroidism or, a million things that if they're undiagnosed, like, we're never going to be able to get somebody all the way into full recovery.
Right.
Until we get to the bottom of that. Likewise, there are some psychiatric comorbidities or co-occurring conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder. If it's, active and the person's, their sleep is being disrupted every night because they're waking up with traumatic nightmares, and, it's going to be very hard to get them into full remission until we then address that. So notice that this is it's the opposite of most things that are promoted on social media, most things that go viral, which are like, oh, here's this one weird trick that will cure your depression. Like, no, there's no
one life hack. Yeah.
There's no one life hack that's going to cure everybody's depression. And yet, if we're willing to stay at it with intellectual humility and open curiosity and treat it almost a little bit like a detective, regimen, like we're medical detectives. Never into the show House, but I understand he was like a medical forensic detective. To have that sort of mentality of like, there are going to be some cases that are really hard, really tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I talk about it as we're experimenting. That's what I talk to clients about. Like we're experimenting and practicing. Like this is what it is. Yeah.
Always. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I find that maybe it's just a principle of human nature that we don't like uncertainty. Uncertainty makes us, in fact, this is a really robust finding. Uncertainty makes us anxious. Uncertainty makes us anxious.
Yeah.
People with generalized anxiety disorder cannot tolerate uncertainty at all. That's like, you can take that to the bank practically. So, all of us would rather be certain than uncertain. And so I don't, in the first session with people, I don't know how you deal with this, Teresa, but I don't introduce all that complexity at the outset.
Right.
It's like, here's a bunch of evidence-based strategies that have really, really strong research support. And, and if they happen to be one of the unlucky folks that, that's not going to get them all the way there, then, we start introducing more nuance and more of that. It's like, okay, no, we're good. We still got this, but now we're going to need to pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
I even have a chapter in my book at the end that's just all about troubleshooting.
Nice.
But I save it for the end,
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, all right, if you've done all this, and I recommend up front, like many people find, not everyone, but many people find that putting these strategies into place will really go a lot better with the assistance of a trained professional. Sometimes it's going to be absolutely essential. It can be an adjuvant. It can be, something to enrich an ongoing therapy, or, maybe just find a therapist who's willing to coach you through and support you through these changes, because when we're depressed, we need a lot of coaching often, and support and encouragement. And so if they get through it and they get to chapter 11, not the bankruptcy, but they get to chapter 11 of the book, and they're still, feeling like I still have a lot of prominent symptoms. Then it's like, all right, well, let's look at all the other possible things that could be going on, and many other things to try. And so now going back, if I can circle back, I think I can, to the last question I think that was on the table, which is like, why write this second edition? What's changed scientifically in the last 16 years? Most of the things from the first edition have held up really nicely, but we've learned a thing or two. So what have we learned? Well, the gut-brain microbe axis we've learned is massively important, that we have trillions of microbes that live in our bodies, most of them in the gut, and they're very good at hacking into our brains and messing with our brains, for better or for worse. Some of them are very friendly and symbiotic. They want us to thrive so they can thrive, and they want us to be social so they can spread their progeny to our friends and family members. They want us hanging out with others. It's a win-win. That's what symbiotic species are all about, right? It's like, it's a win-win. It's a collaborative kind of thing. We give them a nice home. They extract nutrients from our food. They enhance our immune function. And then they hack in the brain through like 5 different pathways that we know of so far. A big one is the so-called vagus nerve, which probably listeners know about. That's like a superhighway connecting the gut to the brain, direct broadband connection from the gut to the brain, that they can hack into and give us more of a feeling of relaxation and turn down our stress response, basically. So the friendly microbes are great at that, but we have a lot of bad actor microbes that we picked up along the way. So that's all new science. Like, we didn't know any of that, or, it wasn't mainstream at all when I was edition. So absolutely had to address that. Had to address mindfulness, which I did address in passing a page or two in the first edition.
Right.
But I just said, look, the originators of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for depression said that when people are depressed, it's very hard for them to do mindfulness training. And so they only train people in this protocol once they're recovered. And it's meant to be a relapse prevention, so a protective strategy. And in the interim, we now have learned, no, in fact, if you're clever about it, you can learn mindfulness while you're depressed.
Right.
And so I really wanted to make sure to acknowledge that. And then, so in the chapter on how to stop ruminating, how to stop brooding on negative thoughts, which is a very toxic process in depression, I wanted to expand some on, mindfulness is a phenomenal anti-rumination. So I wanted to really bring that out. In the chapter on fish oil and omega-3 fats and, what to do with that and why it's important. Well, because they're anti-inflammatory, and most Americans have way too much inflammation is in their brains. It's a sort of overdrive of a type of our immune response that's way too active. And so the immune system is kind of sort of attacking our body now instead of microbes. And in the first edition, I said the best evidence suggests there are 2 omega-3 fats that are antidepressant. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but one's called EPA, one's called DHA. And if we have a piece of wild ocean caught salmon, it'll have both in abundance. And the best research said, well, when you get an antidepressant response with fish oil, it usually has EPA and DHA, usually in about a 2-to-1 ratio. And we know that the antidepressant dose of EPA, which we already knew was the more potent, the dose is about 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams a day, which if you have a pretty refined fish oil capsule, that might be 2 or 3 capsules. Could be up to 5 or 6, depending. And they were usually like in a 2-to-1 ratio, 2-to-1 EPA to DHA. So I recommended in the first edition, like, get that 2-to-1 or close to anywhere around that. And now we've since learned, like for depression at least, the ball game is EPA. And the DHA really just doesn't seem worrying about.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be sure to talk about that. And then another cool discovery is when you eat a piece of fish or like wild venison or any wild game has omega-3 EPA, it's in a form that's known as triglyceride form. And we all probably have heard of triglycerides as a type of fat or lipid in the blood. And we think of triglycerides as a bad thing because we don't want to have too much. That can be linked to heart disease risk. But that's the way all fats get shuttled around in the body. EPA is a free fatty acid. If it's just unlinked to this shuttle of triglyceride or some other shuttle, it gets immediately turned rancid, basically, in our blood. The technical term is it's oxidized.
Okay.
Which not only neutralizes it from being helpful to us as an antidepressant, anti-inflammatory molecule, but it actually now is potentially a little bit toxic.
Fascinating.
And okay, now get this. The cheapest way to make a concentrated fish oil capsule with a lot of EPA is to strip it away from the triglyceride form. Technically, there's a little molecule called glycerol it's like a backbone that has 3 little docking stations, and we like use a solvent, be it chemical solvent, hopefully non-toxic chemical solvent, and now we've just got the free fatty acid, the EPA, and we're doing this under nitrogen so it doesn't go rancid, right? So it's all, hermetically sealed off under nitrogen. And what they used to do when I wrote the first edition of the book is now bring in an alcohol, ethyl, and that would be the backbone. So technically it's called an ethyl ester, which is a fancy way of saying you got this alcohol docking station that has 5 compartments instead of 3. So it can carry 5 EPA molecules around the body. Okay, well, that's great. Except the problem is your cells can't use it. They don't know what to do with the ethyl. And a lot of it really needs to get processed in the liver. Some of it can be processed in other cells in the body, but basically it's way less bioavailable. And a lot of it leaves the gut in free fatty acid form, where it's going to be oxidized or turned rancid or unavailable. Bad news, right? So what we've learned is we want to get the fish oil in triglyceride form, which is the same form that we'd get in our piece of salmon steak. And now there are lots of different fish oil supplements that deliver it in triglyceride form, and they will say triglyceride form.
Oh, okay.
And so I really wanted to get that information out. And there are probably 10 other kind of fine-tuning things like that are actually pretty important.
Okay.
That I wanted to be sure to talk about. I needed to talk about social media, which was really a thing back in, it was around in 2009, but smartphones had just kind of started to have widespread acceptance. So I didn't really spend a lot of time on smartphone addiction early on. Needed to talk about that, social media, toxic screen addiction, so many different things that, we think back to 2009, in some ways it feels like it was a different world.
Yes, it was.
It's funny to think about that because it doesn't seem that long ago to me.
Right.
It really doesn't. But I don't know. There's a time capsule TV show that we kind of like called Big Bang Theory. And we hadn't seen it for, 12 years, 14 years. And it's on a streamer that we have. So I was like, you know what? That series dropped in 2006, I believe. 2007. So 18 years ago. I was like, let's go back and watch season 1, which we thoroughly enjoyed. But it was just like the world has changed so much. It was crazy how much things had changed. But it was really helpful for me to just see it vividly. It's like I remember watching these episodes, and these were a bunch of tech geeks who were like ahead of the curve. These were super early adopters. And it still seems so primitive.
Yeah.
And life seemed so much more innocent and charming. And people were so much more living IRL, as the kids would say, in real life, IRL.
Well, thanks. I'm like, what?
You're talking to somebody, I live my life among Gen Z,
Yeah.
Sure.
As a survival strategy, I really try to learn Gen Z. I try to be bilingual there, They laugh
That's great.
relentlessly. They mock me. Lovingly. But they're just like, yeah, you're not cool enough to use IRL, Steve.
Do you see those factors as, is that what you see as this continued increase in depression? And you said, especially in our younger population, is this what we're talking about, that social media, smartphone, the rise of all that? And now AI on top of the rest.
Yeah. And that's a newer threat, or a newer,
concern.
It's largely a threat, but I think I don't want to come across as a Luddite. I use AI. I use AI every day, for the record.
Sure.
I want to be honest about that. I think it has, like so many great technologies, it has incredible promise and incredible peril.
Yes.
Depending on how it's used. But to your question, Gen Z has by far the highest rate of mental illness we've ever seen. Young cohort, but I mean, it's not even close second. And I mean, it's absolutely staggering. The amount of clinical anxiety in various manifestations, ranging from panic disorder to social anxiety disorder to generalized anxiety disorder to adjacent disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder, OCD. I mean, we see specific phobias. We see a lot. Clinical depression, for sure. Various addictions, various eating disorders, which seem to be on the rise again after in prevalence for a while. But yeah, I think it's three things. One, I think just in general, their lives are far more sedentary, indoor, socially isolated. I mean, in terms of face-to-face interaction, and we have really good data on this. I mean, they spend, high school seniors spend half the amount of time each week, based on general surveys, as seniors did a generation ago. Half as much. And it's tragic. So their lifestyle is degrading in terms of the kinds of things that could improve mental health. Now, when I teach our used to be called abnormal psychology class, probably a lot of listeners took it as abnormal psych. Now we call it psychological disorders, which is a little more descriptive. But when I teach that class, students invariably walk into the class thinking, oh, these are all chemical imbalances. And by the way, probably a third of them have been on medication since they were two or earlier, like or more. And they're like, well, I have a chemical imbalance, so I just need to get on the right chemical cocktail. And again, I try to make it very clear, I'm not anti-medication, but we just need to be realistic about what these meds do and don't do. The current crop of meds, which are not as effective as we need them to be.
Right.
And so I have to kind of gently bring them along into this sort of reorientation to the idea that, first of all, chemical imbalance is a wildly oversimplistic way of framing things. Because it's not like, oh, your brain doesn't have enough serotonin and you take this Effexor and all of a sudden it's like, no, nothing doesn't work anything like that. Nothing works like that. But, do these medications affect the signal strength of the circuits in the brain that use serotonin? Yes, sometimes. Can that be useful for some of these symptoms? Yes, sometimes. Does that mean, that's the main driver of your anxiety or depression? No, absolutely not. Sometimes, but most of the time, it turns out with clinical depression, those are distal effects of more proximal, more central processes, like the brain's runaway stress response that will not shut off, and the brain's illness response to chronic inflammation that says, oh, we are sick right now. So if I have the flu and my brain goes into illness mode because of inflammatory hormones across the brain, do I have a chemical imbalance? That helps you, right? But not really. I mean, I'm having an illness response, and brain circuits are saying shut down and withdraw so you don't infect the people that you care about, and so that you can have time, give your body time to recover. And the person who's clinically depressed, their brain's telling them the exact same thing, often, because not every case, but in at least half of cases, because the brain says, oh, we're in sickness mode, we need to shut down and withdraw. And I have to, when I'm talking to patients, I have to validate, that is what your brain is telling you. So yes, you really, really do have a strong feeling that you're going to be infecting the people around you with your negativity, your sadness, your, whatever. And you really do feel like crawling into a hole and pulling the shades and, but that's a false signal. Because that's your brain's sickness response that you should have when you have COVID, that you should have when you have the flu, but you don't have those things, and your brain is right now. So we put you back out into the world of other people and activities that we're designed to be engaged with. And, so I'm trying to re-socialize students, and it takes me about a week usually. And think about the needle that I'm trying to thread here, which I think is like anything, any concept that's worthwhile. It's not all or nothing. And I one of the very first lessons I teach them is we have to resist the lure of all or nothing, black and white, dichotomous thinking, which gives us great emotional comfort.
Yes.
When we make our world very black and white and very simple,
right.
It's comforting. If we're not very bright, it makes life easier. They're all bright, so I don't have to worry about that. But I mean, truly, the more intellectual bandwidth we have, the more capacity we have for very easily seeing the shades of gray. But in many cases, that doesn't matter because it's so emotionally appealing to think in black and white terms. So some of the smartest people I know are really stupid when it comes to just seeing the world in very polarized black and white terms because of the emotional comfort that gives them.
Right.
And so and students are, they're kind of like, oh, that's pretty cool. That actually, yeah, I see that. They could see it more easily in the people around them themselves.
As we are.
But so we keep coming back to that. It's like we don't want to be thinking about anything in black and white terms, or almost anything. And so it's like, all right, does depression involve problems with brain function? Yes. Is that all that's going on? No, not by a long shot, because depression also involves the sort of negative thinking we're talking about, rumination. And these things interact, because the more we ruminate, the more it ramps up the brain's stress response. And the more, it amplifies our negative emotions, which ramps up our feeling of emotional pain, which ramps up inflammation, which, pushes us into shutdown mode. And, so it's like, okay, these things are all interconnected. And it turns out that you can affirm that depression entails some neurochemical imbalances, and that doesn't tell us anything about the most effective way of treating it.
Tell us more about that.
Well, okay. And these are maybe some deep waters, but I think it's worth going there.
Yeah.
Most people intuitively, in most cultures, most times and places, most people have intuitively been what we would call mind-body dualists. Meaning, intuitively, it feels to all of us on the inside like there's our body, and yes, we have a brain, it's in our body, but then we have a mind, the real us, that possesses our body and inhabits our body and controls our body, but is not in any meaningful way co-resident with the body. I mean, in a full neuroscientific sense. Neuroscience says the mind is what the brain does. Neuroscience says the mind and brain are flip sides of a single unitary underlying reality. They're different levels of experience and analysis, but that the mind emerges from, or is, basically the software running on the platform of our neural architecture. And our thoughts are the internal subjective experience of a brain that's running our mind. And so, if we are willing to let go of radical mind-body dualism, the idea that nothing that's happening in our brain truly affects our mind, or if it does, the way a lot of people who bought into the chemical imbalance framing heavily promoted by our drug companies. I just have to put out there, heavily promoted by our drug companies. They love the idea of chemical imbalance. Why? Because when patients hear, oh, you have a chemical imbalance, and they're like, okay, well, I'm still a mind-body dualist, but I can accept that my brain is part of my body. And if there's a chemical imbalance in my brain, that can affect me. And there are off-the-shelf analogies like, oh, when I'm drunk or tipsy, that's something that I ingested. It affects my brain and it affects my subjective experience, my mind, my emotion, my perceptions. So I get the idea that something could affect my brain and that could affect my mind, but it's this one-off sort of edge case. It's not central to who I am. And so patients often get really excited about the chemical imbalance framing because they're like, oh, well, it's like diabetes. I just don't have enough insulin. So if I have a chemical imbalance, oh, I have anxiety, I have depression, I just don't have enough serotonin. I'll take this pill, it'll give me serotonin. Bullshit, it doesn't, but it's told. Or take this pill, get the serotonin that my brain needs, just like an insulin pill would help a diabetic. This is going to help my anxiety. No harm, no foul. But if we are neuroscientifically informed, we're like, oh, the mind and brain are flip sides of the same reality. The mind is what the brain does. Then anything, oh, this is good. Okay, I wish I had a drum roll. I don't know if you can add it in.
We will add one. We'll figure that out.
Anything that changes my thoughts is changing my brain.
Have you ever felt confused or overwhelmed in relationships? Teresa and I have come up with a free mini course that we think will really help you out with a lot of the common relationship experiences so that you can improve your communication skills with all of the people in your life and really make a change for the better.
Yeah, we really believe that everybody deserves the opportunity to learn healthy relationship skills so that we can get through life having a good, healthy relationship experience. So click the link, put your email in, you'll get the PDF, spend a few hours working on it, and please let us know what your experience is. We know it will benefit you in some way. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that one was pretty good.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Check.
Like literally, our brain is changing during this conversation. We're
Right.
growing new synaptic connections.
Right.
And lots of other changes as well. I mean,
Yes.
neuronal changes even. And then anything that changes the brain has the potential to change our emotions and our feelings. So everything we do with our bodies, our level of physical activity, it turns out physical exercise is profoundly neurotrophic, profoundly neuroactive, changes our brain signaling, our brain chemistry in ways that are broader than any currently marketed psychiatric medication.
Wow.
Our diet, and it should feel obvious to most of us if we think about it. It's like, well, our brain is made out of the stuff we eat, ultimately, right? Every molecule in our brain pretty much came from our diet at one point. So obviously, what the nutrients we get or don't get in our diet is going to affect our brain function. Our sleep, what happens when we sleep? Well, we detox the brain. We get, and we recharge it. So we replenish all the wrong, it's like a pit stop, I know there was a movie, F1, I haven't seen it yet, but out in IMAX, Formula One racing cars, like they come in, stop, and it's like, oh, we got to refuel, we got to change the tires, we got to, like our brain is like this high performance Formula One car.
Yeah.
And, we go in for this 7-8 hour pit stop at night. And if we don't get it, like we cannot expect that Formula One, that highly precision to high performance machine to keep operating at that same level. So what I tell my students, same thing I tell my patients is, look, there are literally hundreds of ways that we can affect so-called brain chemistry or brain function. And most of them have nothing to do with medication. And that's profound. I mean, even as simple as, how about this? We have specialized photoreceptors, light receptors in the back of the eye, in the retina of the eye, And they have a broadband connection to the body circuitry in the midbrain. It's called the SCN, suprachiasmatic nucleus, in the hypothalamus of the brain. It's our body clock. And it has downstream projections to the circuits that regulate our sleep and the circuits that regulate our activity level and our arousal level and our energy level. So just by getting natural sunlight, which turns out, depending on the day, to be 100, 500 times brighter than indoor artificial lighting, by getting natural sunlight, we're not only resetting our body clock so we get more reliable, better sleep, but we're also getting a dopamine-based stimulant effect as if we were taking a mild stimulant. And a lot of people with attention deficit problems find if they exercise outdoors in the morning, because exercise has a lot of similar dopamine-based effects, then they get a double whammy. And it's like a mild stimulant dose for their productivity and their focus for 4 to 6 hours, maybe. It's not going to give them the same sort of boost as like a high dose of Adderall, but it's, it's going to be noticeable.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Walker, did I get to your question?
You did. Thank you. Yeah.
Any follow-up, counselor?
No. I do have another follow-up if you've got a hot one. The brain's illness response that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I have autoimmune issues myself. And so I'm working with a functional medicine doctor and doing a lot of different things right now that I'm going through. But the brain's illness response was something that really clicked with me when you said that. And it struck me as you were talking that it sounds like it's the illness response is the culmination of a multitude of factors. Like you move down that road and then the illness response kicks in. At first, when you said it, I thought, oh, it's just one of many brain responses that come along. And that may be true as well.
Well, yeah, no, it's a great, I'm sorry.
That's really an observation, but I guess the question is through the 6 steps or 6 options, however you want to say it, of the TLC protocol, there are, I'm assuming, ways to address that illness response, because it struck me I could be in a loop of illness response. And maybe many of our viewers are as well. And so, I'm wondering how your protocol fits in with, hey, how do we get that thing to turn off and keep it off as often as possible, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of that illness response, it turns out, and you may have heard this before, but when we have a viral infection, especially, a lot of the symptoms that feel so crappy are not the virus or even the damage that the virus is doing in the short term. It's our body's immune system ramping up to try to get the virus under control. And so there are all these hormones, inflammatory hormones, that are released to coordinate all kinds of functions. Some are tissue repair. So like if we sprain an ankle, it's going to swell up and be all inflamed, right? Some are antimicrobial, so, killing invaders, including viruses. But some of it is actually overshoot, where it's just like, it's way too much.
Right.
And that's what we think of as autoimmune illness, where it's so much that the immune system is so ramped up and on edge that it's just like, well, we're just going to attack anything in the neighborhood, even if it's our own tissues.
Oh, yes.
And when people have high levels of inflammatory hormones, technical term is cytokines, which are used by the immune system. Many of them cross into the brain. And some of them originate in the brain. We now know that wasn't known for a long time. The brain has sort of its own native immune cells and its own lymphatic system, and that's a pretty recent discovery, actually. It was but they can cross the blood-brain barrier. So if they're circulating out in our body, those inflammatory hormones can go into the brain, and they're picked up by circuits that mediate our illness response. And some of them actually are modulated by circuits that use serotonin. So there is a connection. I mean, most of the serotonin in the body is found in our gut, not in our brain. About 10% is in the brain. There is a connection. Sometimes people with chronic illness take an SSRI or SNRI, a serotonergic drug, and they'll experience some uplift in their sense of well-being, some tamping down of that sickness response. But your question was a really sophisticated one. It's like, well, is that the ultimate downstream effect of these other processes that we talked about? Like maybe sleep gets messed up because we're not getting enough, sunlight exposure in our body clock. That happens to a lot of us in the winter, by the way, when the days are cold and short and we, go to work in the dark and get home in the dark. And so we don't get that reset body clock rest. Or the runaway stress response. So we have all these stress hormones, like cortisol, right? Well, cortisol is a steroid. Steroids should be anti-inflammatory. And it turns out, in the short term, cortisol is anti-inflammatory. Fantastic. So stress response should be helpful if we have a lot of inflammation. Mm-hmm. In the short term, maybe. In the long term, no, the opposite. In the long term, if somebody is stressed out a lot, they have a lot of cortisol, the receptors for cortisol disappear. Mm. And so now, we have cortisol every day, all of us, we have a little bit. And we get a surge in the morning that helps us wake up quickly and, prepare for the day. If we're a night owl, we get a second big surge in the late afternoon, early evening. Gives us the energy to not fall asleep, 5 o'clock or 6 or whatever. But if we have cortisol at elevated levels for months and months, our cortisol receptors disappear, and that's hugely inflammatory. Mm-hmm. So we've desensitized to our own cortisol. So, and the net downstream effect, as you predicted, is inflammation. Mm-hmm. And that can be related, of course, to autoimmune illness. And that is a subset of all depression. It turns out, just so I don't overly confuse any more than I already have, listeners or viewers, only about half of all depressed patients, clinically depressed patients, have really high levels of inflammation. Mm. And that half are going to be preferentially responsive to anti-inflammatory lifestyle factors or other anti-inflammatory interventions. So what are those in our protocol? Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about omega-3 fats. Mm. And EPA, the most anti-inflammatory, that's basically the molecular version of omega-3 that's like a drug. And 1,000 milligrams of EPA is anti-inflammatory and is basically like a research-based antidepressant dose. But some people need 2,000. Mm-hmm. Some people need 2,000 because they have a lot of inflammation, or they just don't absorb it well. Or there are a lot of reasons why they might need more. And by the way, I didn't give the disclaimer. I'm not giving medical advice.
Right.
For everybody, talk to your healthcare provider. This is educational, not, please don't say Dr. Ilardi.
Your 100% biased opinion.
All right.
Right.
We understand.
So I would say the omega-3 is the most obviously anti-inflammatory, and it's the lowest hanging fruit.
Right.
In our program. And interestingly enough, if you look at the antidepressant effect of our current antidepressant drugs, the gold standard is you do a randomized trial where patients are randomly assigned to get either placebo, sugar pill, medically inert, it's not even sugar, it's blank gelatin capsule, or the drug, the SSRI, the SNRI. It's not a very big effect. Now, placebo is a reasonably large effect because people, when they take a placebo, if they think it's a real drug, which they usually do if they're in one of these double-blind trials, not everybody, 75, 80% of patients assume they're getting the real drug.
Mm.
So they're taking the blank gel cap. They think it's a real drug, and that addresses their hopelessness. That addresses their helplessness. They're like, oh, I take pills and they make me feel better.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big effect. So if you take a placebo, it's way better than doing nothing on average. If you do nothing, depression over 3 months, if you do nothing, time will heal most depressions, but 3 months is not long enough for time to heal most depressions. It's a very small average improvement. You take a placebo and you think it's a drug, you might get like a 30% reduction in symptom severity over typical treatment windows 2 to 3 months. So if you take the antidepressant, you might get like another 10, 15% boost. But the delta, the difference between on average, now again, individual results can and do vary, but the average patient, we have a depression severity rating scale that we use in clinical research called the Hamilton Rating Scale for Depression. Mm-hmm. And it goes all the way up to 55 points. That's, if somebody just maxes out every single possible symptom. Typical patient who's clinically depressed in a treatment trial is going to be like around 20. Hamilton score of 20. That's if somebody's 20, they're clinically depressed. It might be a little higher. They could go up to 30, maybe 35. At the end of treatment, the placebo group might go from 20 to 12 or 20 to 13. The antidepressant group might go from 20 to 11, like a point, or on average, it's 2 point difference.
Right.
2 points. That's not much.
No.
Yeah.
That's not much at all. So we put that in the standardized units called effect size. And the standardized unit is 0.3. Those who have ever taken stats, that's 0.3 of a standard deviation between the average of both groups. With high dose EPA, now, big caveat, big disclaimer, there are over 500 randomized antidepressant trials. I've just given you an average for those 500.
Right.
In a type of analysis called a meta-analysis. When you do the meta, where you throw everything together and you adjust for how big was the sample, yada, yada. If you do the same thing for high dose EPA for depression, placebo control, it's usually more in the realm of like 0.5 or even higher. If they use really quality, official. So, it's at least as high. How about that?
Right.
At least as high. And of all the lifestyle-based changes that we ask people to make, this is the easiest because it's like 10 seconds a day once you have it.
Right.
Exercise, and I'm talking like brisk walking to get heart rate up, into the aerobic range. So like you're breathing kind of heavy, you might be perspiring a bit. It's challenging to carry on a conversation, more challenging. You wouldn't be able to sing with good breath control if you're, walking to the point of aerobic. So it's brisk. It's like you mean it, like you're late for a plane or something. 30 minutes in the aerobic range 3 times a week. So think like 5 to 10 minutes of warm up to get your heart rate up that high. So we'll say 35, 40 minutes, 3 times a week. Now we're talking about an effect size that is probably more like 0.6, 0.8, so higher still.
Wow.
Remember, the antidepressant 0.3, so, and why? Well, one reason is it addresses more things. It's anti-inflammatory. And it turns down our stress circuits. And it helps with our brain's energy utilization. It will actually help us grow new mitochondria in the brain cells. It'll help with the deepest, most restorative phase of sleep, which we call slow wave sleep or delta wave. It's the deep. If you have a smartwatch or something that tracks your sleep, it'll be when it says deep sleep. That's what. So, there are a lot of things that we can lean into that are just simple modifiable lifestyle habits that can really help. Now, with an autoimmune illness, that's taken it to a whole different level. And, I know more than I ever wanted to know about this because my daughter had an autoimmune illness since she was, that we know of, since she was 14. She's now 28. And, it's been a really challenging journey, and one where, and she's a clinician, she's all about lifestyle medicine, and, she's really leaned into it. And you look at her and you just think, just like I look at you, and think, oh, well, she's thriving, she's healthy, she's, and she is, but like, it wouldn't be the sort of thing like, oh, just do Dr. Ilardi's TLC program and it's going to cure your lupus. It's going to cure your mixed connective tissue disorder, or your, because no, there are a lot bigger guns, and again, I'm not anti-medication. I'm not, I'm anti-suffering. I'm anti-illness. I'm like,
I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
whatever we could possibly use. That though, I will say that I think 21st century American medicine is way too dismissive of the power of lifestyle-based intervention, and too eager, reach for a prescription pad, and to be too reliant on that, and not to give us as patients the credit, just the respect to shoot straight with us about like, what are the limitations of it? What are the downside risks? What are the side effects? What else you got? What else is there?
Right.
And I think a lot of times patients are just never told.
Yeah, there are two things that I had written down, and I know, Dr. Ilardi, that we are set to end in 4 minutes.
Can you believe it?
No, but yes.
I think we maybe
love
got
our conversations with our guests, so this has been great. Anyway,
I know.
Get to it.
I know.
Use your time.
I know we didn't get through hardly any of the questions we had. What recommendation do you have for people whose healthcare providers, maybe they aren't saying don't do the steps in the depression cure book, but they're not, maybe they're more dismissive or uninformed. What do you imagine would be helpful for someone to say to their doctor?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing that I've run into again and again, I'll give you two things actually. But the biggest is people who fail to take seriously the fact that depression usually profoundly lowers our ability to initiate things. So when we're depressed, we very often know what to do or what could be helpful, or we have an intention to do something that seems like it could be helpful. But we don't have the circuits of the brain in the left prefrontal cortex that are going to give us that spark of initiative to act. It just doesn't happen. And so the person will, sit and they'll be with their phone or they're on the couch or, doing whatever. And they're like, oh, I heard that Dr. Ilardi guy talk about like, oh, brisk walk outside like that. I could do that. I could get out in nature. I could, but they just can't make it happen. So with our patients, we went into the program. In fact, I had colleagues tell me like, oh yeah, great idea, but like, these are all the things you can't do when you're depressed, so it's not going to work. I said, well, no, these are things you can't initiate easily when you're depressed. But if you have somebody to partner with you,
right,
and and provide that spark of initiative and that encouragement and that that little impetus, and now that could even be a smartphone app. If they're willing to use their app that way, like, oh, I just got the notification, like, yeah, okay, I can get up and put my tennis shoes on, whatever. So I think it's really important for providers to understand, you cannot just hand your patient a list of like, oh, start doing these 6 things on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of our patients, for example, we connected with a personal trainer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these were volunteers, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have a big federal grant for this. We were flying lean and mean. We had no money. These were students in health, sports, and exercise science who wanted to do a practicum where they were meeting with clinically depressed patients and being their, what do we call them? Exercise consultant,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which had the beauty of shortening down to ex-cons.
Uh-huh.
We didn't call them that to their face, but so we had the ex-cons come in, and they would meet with the patients, the exercise consultant, the trainers, and look at their calendars and schedule 3 blocks of time, 45 minutes each for the following week, and say we're committed, we're locked in, we're going to do this, and then give them that little reminder that we love to get from, like, you're going to get your teeth cleaned tomorrow. Oh, just a reminder that, you're scheduled to get your teeth cleaned, or I hope you get these. I need them sometimes. And so they get that little prompt. And with the patient's permission, they would get it again, like right before, like, they're on board. And there's that accountability, and there's that encouragement. And so, I just think that's absolutely essential. And for folks listening to this or watching this who are struggling with depression, or they have a loved one who's struggling, it's like, I really want to validate, like, yeah, it's hard when you're depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, let's be real. It's hard even when you're feeling great to pick up a new habit.
Mm-hmm.
Habit formation is effortful.
Yes.
And sometimes more than others, like picking up a habit of taking fish oil every day, not that hard. Picking up a habit of getting outside and getting some bright light, or using a therapeutic light box winter when, not that hard. But like, once you build it in, you get the little prompt. It's like, it's pretty passive. It's not that difficult. Exercise, harder. Reconnecting with people that we've been pulling away from, harder. It takes a lot of coaching and encouragement. Anti-ruminative strategies, that varies a lot for people. So we talk about breaking the rumination habit, that rumination, the fancy word for just dwelling on our negative thoughts, which requires noticing them, and then noticing that we're ruminating, that we're just sitting at the wall and going over and over and over, like, oh my God, I can't believe the thing I said, or they did, or, whatever. And when people are depressed, they spend hours often every day doing that. And even when they're like watching TV or scrolling on social media, or watching TikTok. I had to think of watching TikTok, or they're ruminating. And so to learn how to notice when it's happening, and then consciously redirect.
Yeah.
Something more engaging. For some people that comes more easily. For some people, that's a real challenge. And that requires some coaching. And so, all right, let's just work on one habit at a time. And, make that begin to feel, once something becomes a habit, then we don't have to use any willpower, right? We just have a little finite amount of willpower that we can spend on 1 or 2 things, maybe a day. So we use our willpower on the habit of the week, like, I'm going to be taking my fish oil. Oh, I'm going to be, meeting with Biff, my personal trainer, we're going to go for a brisk walk, whatever. And then once it's a habit, I don't have to use willpower anymore. Like when I first started flossing daily, I don't know why I'm on dental. So when I first started flossing every day, it's like, really, it's like 2 minutes. It's too long. It's such a hassle. But once you've done it like 20 times, it's like your brain is like, oh yeah, that's the thing we do. And you even get a little burst of reward. It's like, oh yeah, that's the thing we do.
Yeah.
Doing the habit.
Doing the habit. Yeah. There is an app. I don't remember how long ago I came across it, but it is on Android and Apple, and it's called Mind Bell.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, and what I like about it is that it's not like an alarm that you have to turn off, and it's not intrusive.
Mm.
And you can set it to start going off a certain time of day and ending a certain time of day. And then you can set it to go off approximately every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes. And when I'm using that with clients, what I say is, we're trying to get this higher in your consciousness. We're trying to get your brain to see that you really feel like this is important to you.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to hear the chime go off every time it goes off. Your brain will dismiss it sometimes. But the times that you do, let's say for the first week, when you hear it, maybe you just take a breath. And then maybe the next week you decide to go outside and walk. And so for me, letting your body know that you really are putting in effort. But it's just a nice, unintrusive, gentle reminder.
Yeah.
And we
like,
can,
it'll
we
be
can make,
helpful for rumination.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
when people have a habit of ruminating,
Right.
the first step is learning to notice when it's happening.
Absolutely.
And a little reminder like that would be perfect.
It is so great.
Like, hey, and it's like, oh, hey, I wasn't ruminating. I was actually locked in,
Right.
Because really, the opposite of rumination is like we're focused. We're, we're engaged. We're doing something that, and we know this even from, again, if I can invoke one last brain circuit. There's a brain circuit you may have heard of called the default mode network.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do neurofeedback, so
okay.
Yeah. So we talk about the default mode network.
So the DMN default mode network gets active when we are in our head. When we're reflecting, when we're processing, and we need some of that, but we don't nearly as much as most of us get. And when people are depressed, they're in default mode network all the time.
Right.
When we toggle out of it, there's a piece of the parietal cortex called the precuneus, which is like a toggle switch. Or actually, it's more like a slider. How much are you going to be in default mode versus what's the opposite? Like you're just all in, you're engaged. And precuneus says no. Default mode network, calm down. Just no, we're all in. We're in flow now. We're just like fully in this flow state. We're all in. We've had this conversation now for like 2 hours. We've all commented like, it's gone by really fast. Like, that's like a hallmark of like, oh, we've been in this flow state, right? Yeah. And I haven't been aware of any rumination in the last 2 hours.
Right.
So once patients learn like what rumination is and how to notice it, then it's like they need to make that decision. Like, okay, this is toxic. It can be seductive, like, like, oh, wait, I don't want to let go of this. I might still figure out why he left me or, why it's like, right. It's like, oh, I'm just going to keep just chewing away at it. And it's like, all right, set a timer. I try to be more polite, when I know we're short of time, but, if we will set a timer and give ourselves like 10 minutes and just say, all right, knock yourself out, write down all the thoughts of, and then walk away. So like ruminate to your heart's content for 10 minutes and then just set it aside. And there's something beautiful about getting it on paper and then we can walk away. And then it's like, well, okay, now what do I need? I need something engaging. What's that? The world of people and activities that we're designed for. I need to be interacting or I need to be doing something engaging. I mean, it might be I'm out like, picking weeds in a garden or something, but I could ruminate while I do that. Maybe I need to do a great podcast like yours while I'm doing that. Right. But now my mind's engaged and I'm not ruminating. And so, I don't know if that answers your original question, Teresa, but I do think that we want to validate for patients, like, habit formation is not easy for any of us. It's harder in depression, but it's not impossible.
Right.
But we're probably going to need some coaching and some
Yeah.
encouragement. And what I tell my graduate students, and I'll be really curious to get your perspective on this. Maybe this is like a closing thought. I think that being a good therapist is often more comparable to being a good coach than it is to being some Svengali, some wise mystic coming down from the mountaintop, seeing into the depths of your soul and having all great spidey senses. And, I'm not saying, God bless the people who could do that. But I mean, I think a lot of times if you look at what's a good coach, there's somebody that's like, okay, well, I'm not I'm not out on the field. Those are my players, but I got to be able to draw up the play, and I got to prepare them to run the play, and I got to inspire them and give them the confidence that this play is going to work, but you're going to be the one who's going to run it, and you can do it. And I'm right here with you, and I think in our training, I was lucky. I did get a little bit of training in that, but I didn't have that orientation at all until I started really leaning into lifestyle-based interventions. And then it's like, my patients need my coaching more than they often need my insight. So I think if listeners to this who are thinking about putting these things into practice take that to heart, it's like, okay, well, you're probably going to need to find a good coach, as habit formation is challenging. Yeah. And even under the best of circumstances. Yeah. So, it's okay if you can't do this on your own. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you need appropriate help. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about my role, absolutely, I see myself as a coach, not a mental health coach, but a coach, a teacher. I often am reflecting back to clients, like when they're like, thank you so much. And I said, you made every choice. I was just here, loving you and supporting you and sharing with you the things that I've tried in my life. Whether it's self-work or training. I'm just trying to be curious with you about what is really helpful to you or not. Let's just keep experimenting. And so, for me, being curious and present and just knowing this is the rest of my life learning so that I can just keep sharing with people is really what I feel like my role is. And sure, you're like when people are like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, do you really want to know? No. I'm like, just be really clear that you want to know what I'm thinking. Sure. I'm more than happy, to share with you, what it is that I'm observing.
You do the therapist jujitsu. I'm really curious what prompted you to ask that right
now. Tell me more.
I'm gonna flip it right back on you.
Right. Tell me more. But it's about empowerment. I know how much more effective we feel and what life is like when we feel capable and competent in living our own life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I got to run, but
I took you way past time. Thank you so much, Dr. Ilardi.
Yeah.
To meet you.
We would love to do this again because I would love to ask you more questions.
Well, sometime if you're up for it, I don't know if you have any interest, but I really want to talk about AI and psychotherapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I'm not even going to say it's coming for us. It's already here.
It's here. It's part of what I'm writing about. So absolutely. Okay. Well, I will email you. We will find another date and we'll have another conversation.
Okay.
Sounds great. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.